Maya Thompson grew up in a small, crowded apartment in a part of Chicago where opportunities were scarce and life was never easy. Every morning, she would wake up to the sound of sirens, the smell of fried food from nearby street vendors, and the chatter of neighbors getting ready for work. School was a challenge because her family could not afford extra books or tuition for special programs, but Maya loved learning. She would spend hours reading old cookbooks she found at secondhand stores, dreaming about the day she could cook in a real restaurant with shining silver utensils and sparkling crystal glasses. Her parents worked tirelessly to make ends meet. Her mother cleaned offices late into the night, and her father drove a taxi through freezing winters and scorching summers. Despite their struggles, they always told Maya that hard work and kindness were more valuable than money. Her parents often reminded her that the world was not always fair, but that did not mean she should give up on her dreams. Even as a teenager, Maya was determined to make something of herself. She worked odd jobs after school, delivering newspapers, babysitting, and helping at a local diner, anything to save a little money for her future. Her friends spent their free time hanging out or playing games, but Maya would practice recipes she read about in her worn cookbooks, trying to perfect each dish even though she had only a small kitchen and very few ingredients. Her dream was to become a chef, but she knew that this would not be easy. Most of the people she saw on TV cooking shows or working in fancy restaurants came from wealthy families or had expensive culinary school degrees. Maya had neither, yet that did not stop her. She believed that determination, talent, and a kind heart could help her succeed even in the toughest situations. When she turned 18, Maya managed to get a part-time job as a waitress at a restaurant called the Gilded Spoon, a place she had visited once with her mother on a special occasion. The restaurant was elegant and glamorous, with chandeliers that sparkled like stars and tables set with polished silverware. It was the kind of place where the wealthy and powerful dined, and Maya knew that working there would teach her discipline, precision, and the kind of professionalism she could never learn anywhere else. Her first day was intimidating. She wore a crisp uniform and polished shoes, but she felt small as she looked around at the polished floors, the busy staff, and the constant hum of orders being called out in rapid succession. Many of her co-workers came from more privileged backgrounds, and at first, she felt like she did not belong. Some customers ignored her or spoke to her rudely, but Maya remembered her parents' advice: work hard, stay polite, and never let anyone make you feel less than you are. Over the weeks, she learned the ropes, memorizing the menu, understanding the special requests of regular customers, and balancing trays full of delicate plates without dropping a single one. Every night, she would walk home tired, aching, and sometimes frustrated, but she felt proud because she was closer to her dream than she had ever been. She began saving money for culinary school, tucking away every extra dollar from her tips, imagining the day she could wear a chef's jacket, cook in a kitchen of her own, and create dishes that would make people smile. Maya's life was not just about work. She had friends in her neighborhood who supported her, neighbors who admired her courage and drive, and even young kids who looked up to her. She became a symbol of determination in her small community, proof that even a girl from a struggling family could reach for something greater. Even when life felt unfair, Maya held on to her vision. Her apartment may have been small, her meals simple, and her clothes worn, but inside her heart, she carried a world full of possibilities. Every day she reminded herself, this is just the beginning, and one day, the world would notice her talent and dedication. Her dream was fragile, built from nothing but hope, courage, and relentless effort, yet, it was strong enough to guide her through every hardship, every tray she carried, every rude comment she endured. Every long night she worked without complaint was a step closer to the life she imagined, a life where she could create beauty through food, help her family, and prove that no matter where you start, dreams could come true if you never gave up. And so, Maya continued, waking each day with the same determination, dreaming bigger than the small apartment she lived in, knowing that one day, all her hard work, all her sacrifices, and all her courage would open doors she could only imagine. She believed that her dream was worth every challenge because dreams built from nothing often shine the brightest. The evening air in Chicago was chilly, carrying the distant sounds of traffic and the faint smell of roasted chestnuts from a street vendor nearby. Maya had just finished her shift at the Gilded Spoon, exhausted but satisfied. Her uniform was slightly wrinkled, and the heels of her shoes ached from hours of balancing trays and weaving through crowded tables. She was looking forward to a quiet walk home, the city lights reflecting on wet pavement, when a sharp, tiny cry cut through the hum of the evening. At first, she thought it was a stray animal or a passerby's child calling for help, but the sound was insistent, a desperate wail that made her stop mid-step. Her instincts immediately kicked in, heart pounding. She followed the sound to the side alley behind the restaurant, a place she had walked past 100 times but never thought much about. There, in a dark corner near the dumpsters, sat a small baby carrier, rocking slightly on its own. The infant inside was tiny, maybe only a few months old, wrapped in a thin, drenched blanket, shivering, eyes wide with fear. The child's cries pierced Maya's chest like a knife. A rush of adrenaline coursed through her, and without thinking, she knelt down and gently lifted the baby into her arms. The baby was heavier than she expected, fragile yet strong enough to cling to her. Maya tucked him close, wrapping her coat around him as best she could. The cold air stung her fingers as she tried to calm him, whispering soothing words she barely knew herself. "It's okay, little one, you're safe now." Her mind raced. Who could have left a baby here? Why would someone abandon such a tiny life in a dark alley? She looked around frantically for any sign of the parents, but the street was empty, the night eerily quiet except for the occasional car passing by. Fear and concern twisted in her stomach, yet there was no time to hesitate. She had to act. She ran toward the restaurant's side entrance, hoping someone might know something, but it was locked. Maya's pulse quickened as she realized she couldn't leave the baby outside in the cold for even a second. She needed help, but calling for it could take precious minutes. She made a split-second decision to go straight to the hospital, cradling the baby close to her chest as she navigated the slick pavement. Every step felt heavier, but she refused to slow down. Her thoughts raced. What if the baby was sick? What if someone was looking for him? She had no answers, only her determination and the small life she was holding in her arms. People passing by stared at her, some curious, some indifferent, but she didn't notice. Her entire world had shrunk to the baby's frightened eyes and trembling little body. As she approached the hospital, her hands were numb, and the baby's cries had softened into quiet whimpers. She ran through the automatic doors and into the emergency department, explaining quickly to the nurse at the reception desk, "Please, someone left this baby outside. He's cold. He needs help." Within minutes, doctors and nurses were rushing to take the infant, wrapping him in warm blankets, checking his temperature, and examining him for signs of distress. Maya stood back, relief washing over her, but also a strange sense of dread. She knew what she had done was the right thing, but she also knew the consequences could be serious. Leaving her station at the restaurant, even for a life-or-death situation, would not sit well with her manager. Her phone buzzed with missed calls from work. She hesitated, wondering how she would explain this, but the baby's small fingers curling around hers erased any doubt. She had made the choice, and nothing else mattered. For the first time in hours, Maya allowed herself to breathe, watching as the baby began to settle, soothed by the warmth and care around him. She realized that in that moment, she had done something extraordinary, something beyond her ordinary life, something that required courage she didn't know she had. Little did Maya know that this single act of compassion would set in motion events far beyond her imagination, connecting her life with people she had never met, lives she had never imagined touching, and a destiny that would change her own forever. That night, as she walked home later, still trembling from adrenaline but smiling softly, she understood something important. Life was unpredictable, and sometimes the smallest actions could have the biggest consequences. She didn't know it yet, but this night, the night she found a baby in an alley, was only the beginning of a story that would shake the foundations of everything she believed about fate, kindness, and courage. Maya Thompson thought that saving the baby was the hardest part of the night, but she was soon proven wrong. As she carefully handed the child over to the hospital staff, her phone buzzed incessantly, each vibration a reminder of the life she had temporarily left behind, the life she had been building at the Gilded Spoon. She knew she couldn't ignore it, but every instinct told her she had done the right thing. By the time she returned to the restaurant, the shift was over, but the tension was thick in the air. Her manager, a tall, stern man named Mr. Reynolds, was waiting near the entrance, arms crossed and face red with anger. "Maya, where have you been?" he demanded, voice echoing through the empty dining room. The employees who remained shifted uncomfortably, avoiding her gaze. Maya took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "I found a baby outside," she said, voice trembling. "He was left alone in the alley, cold and crying. I couldn't just leave him there." Mr. Reynolds' eyes narrowed, disbelief and irritation mixing in his expression. "You abandoned your post. This is a professional establishment. We don't have time for fairy tales about abandoned babies." His voice rose, harsh and unforgiving. The words stung Maya more than she expected, but she didn't flinch. "Sir, it wasn't a choice. The baby needed help. You defied instructions," he interrupted, his tone cutting. "Do you understand the consequences of leaving your station during peak hours? You are fired, effective immediately." The words felt like a punch to her chest, but Maya's mind raced faster than her fear. She had prepared for this possibility, but it still hurt. She had invested years into this job, learning, practicing, saving money for culinary school, building her dream step by step, and now, in one swift moment, it seemed all of that effort might be wasted. Yet, as she looked down at her uniform, imagining the baby wrapped in her coat and shivering in the alley, a calm certainty washed over her. She had made the choice, and even if it cost her, she would never regret it. There was a strange power in standing up for what was right, even when the world tried to punish you for it. Some of her co-workers glanced nervously at her, unsure whether to support her or stay silent. The restaurant was a place of order, prestige, and strict rules, and her act of defiance, though morally heroic, did not fit into the polished, controlled environment. Yet, Maya didn't care about their judgment. She had done what most people would never dare to do. After being escorted out by Mr. Reynolds, Maya walked into the night, her steps echoing on the wet pavement. Every sound felt amplified. The distant horns, the splash of puddles under her shoes, the quiet whisper of the wind. And yet, she felt lighter than she had in years. She had chosen humanity over career, compassion over convenience, and for the first time, she truly understood the meaning of courage. Her phone buzzed again, but this time, it wasn't her manager. It was a friend from her neighborhood, someone who had been following her late-night errands. "Maya, I saw what you did," the message read. "You saved a baby. You're amazing." Maya smiled faintly, feeling warmth spread through her chest. Her courage might have cost her her job, but it had also reminded her that even in a harsh world, kindness did not go unnoticed. Meanwhile, news of the abandoned baby began to spread quietly through social media. A nurse at the hospital posting a simple message about a brave waitress who risked everything to save a child. Maya didn't know it yet, but the ripple she had created that night would grow far beyond her imagination, touching lives she had never known, and changing her own life forever. Walking home in the early hours, her uniform soaked from rain and her shoes scuffed, Maya felt a strange mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. She had lost a job, yes, but she had gained something much more important. A moment of moral victory, a story she could carry in her heart forever. She had acted without hesitation, guided only by instinct and kindness. And that decision would echo far longer than any paycheck or promotion ever could. That night, as the city slept around her, Maya made a quiet promise to herself. No matter what happened next, she would continue to act with courage, compassion, and integrity, because even in a world that often rewarded selfishness, she knew that doing what was right was the true measure of strength, and she had just proven to herself that she was stronger than she had ever imagined. By the time the sun rose over Chicago, Maya Thompson's life had already begun to change, though she didn't know it yet. The small hospital room where she had left the baby was buzzing with activity as nurses and doctors tended to him, checking for signs of illness, dehydration, or injury. They worked efficiently, their calm professionalism a sharp contrast to the chaos of the previous night. Maya stood outside, wrapped in her damp coat, trying to catch her breath. She hadn't slept, hadn't eaten, and her shoes were still wet from the alley, yet, she felt an unfamiliar sense of peace, a quiet satisfaction in knowing that she had done what needed to be done. It wasn't about recognition or reward, it was about saving a life, and she had succeeded. But soon, the ripple of her actions began to spread beyond the hospital walls. A kind-hearted nurse who had witnessed Maya's bravery posted a short message on a popular social media platform, describing how a young waitress had risked everything to save an abandoned baby. The post was simple, honest, and heartfelt. A brave waitress found a baby in an alley last night. She refused to leave him alone, even though it meant losing her job. "Heroes exist among us," it read. At first, the post received a few likes, a handful of comments praising Maya's courage, but within hours, it began to take on a life of its own. People shared it across networks, adding their own admiration, their own stories of kindness. The narrative was irresistible, a story of sacrifice, courage, and humanity. It was exactly the kind of story the world needed, especially in a city often defined by hustle, competition, and survival. By midday, local news outlets picked up the story, sending reporters to the hospital to interview staff and gather details. Even without Maya's permission, her face appeared alongside headlines praising her selflessness. Waitress risks career to save abandoned baby. Brave young woman acts when others could not. Compassion over career. A true hero in Chicago. Maya's phone wouldn't stop ringing, friends and neighbors calling to check on her, local acquaintances sending messages of support. Some people even offered small donations to help cover the baby's care. Though overwhelmed, she felt a deep warmth, realizing that one act of courage could inspire so many others. That small decision to act without hesitation had created a wave of admiration and hope that no one could have predicted. Meanwhile, the baby's story caught the attention of distant eyes, including people in powerful positions who rarely noticed ordinary acts of heroism. Among them was a man named Alexander Grant, a billionaire businessman who had built his empire from scratch and had recently been searching desperately for his missing son. Staring at the news article, he froze when he noticed a familiar detail: a small birthmark on the baby's wrist, a mark that matched the one he had seen the day his son went missing. At that moment, he realized the story was no longer just a news article. It was the key to finding his child. The recognition brought a rush of emotions, relief, fear, and gratitude, all at once. He immediately began arranging travel, gathering proof, and preparing to confront the woman who had saved his son without knowing who he was. Meanwhile, Maya remained unaware of the massive impact her actions were having. She walked through the bustling streets of Chicago, listening to strangers whisper about the brave waitress and the hero who saved a baby. She felt proud, yes, but also strangely disconnected. Her life had been small and ordinary, and suddenly, it felt as if she were standing on the edge of a world she didn't fully understand. That evening, as Maya sat alone in her tiny apartment, she reflected on the whirlwind of the past 24 hours. Losing her job had stung, but it no longer seemed like a punishment. She had discovered a strength inside herself she didn't know existed, a courage that could defy fear, authority, and societal expectation. She had acted when others hesitated, and in doing so, she had changed more than just one life. Unseen by Maya, the wheels of fate were turning, connecting her act of kindness to a man of immense wealth and influence, a man desperate to find his missing child. It was as if the universe had aligned, placing her at the right place at the right time, giving her the power to make a difference far greater than she could imagine. And so, Maya's ordinary life, built from small dreams and quiet determination, began to intersect with extraordinary circumstances, setting the stage for a story of courage, destiny, and the profound impact of doing what is right. Alexander Grant, a man whose life was measured in numbers, deals, and boardroom victories, rarely paid attention to social media, but that morning, a notification caught his eye, a simple news article shared by an acquaintance: Waitress risks career to save abandoned baby. He skimmed the headline, initially thinking it was just another heartwarming story, the kind that made headlines and disappeared by evening. But then he noticed a detail, a small birthmark on the baby's wrist, the same birthmark that had haunted his mind for weeks, the mark he remembered from the day his infant son had disappeared. His pulse quickened, hands gripping the edge of his sleek marble desk. Alexander reread the post, scanning the photos and description. Every word resonated with him like a beacon: the baby's tiny features, the shivering blanket, the abandoned alley. It was unmistakable. This was his son, the child he had been searching for tirelessly. The realization struck him like lightning, leaving him momentarily speechless, then replaced by a torrent of emotions: relief, gratitude, fear, and a burning urgency. Without hesitation, Alexander called his private assistant, issuing instructions with clipped precision: book a flight to Chicago immediately. Private jet. Full security. Bring every necessary document confirming the child's identity. This ends tonight, he said, voice taut with urgency, every second counting. The world he was used to, boardrooms, investors, contracts, felt trivial compared to the task ahead, the task of finding his son alive and safe. Meanwhile, back in Chicago, Maya Thompson was oblivious to the attention her actions had drawn from one of the most powerful men in the world. She had returned home after another long day of running errands and volunteering at a small community center. Still thinking about the baby and hoping he was healthy, she felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. Unaware that her life was about to intersect with someone whose wealth and influence dwarfed anything she had ever known. Alexander's team worked swiftly, arranging verification with the hospital staff, contacting the authorities, and confirming that the child in question matched every identifying detail from his records. Within hours, everything was prepared, identification confirmed, logistics in place, and a private jet waiting for him at the edge of the city. As Alexander boarded the jet, he couldn't shake the image of the young woman in the news article, the waitress who had saved his son. Her courage, selflessness, and quick thinking had made this reunion possible. He felt a wave of admiration and gratitude towards someone he had never met, a stranger whose bravery had bridged the gap between despair and hope. The flight to Chicago was tense, every minute feeling like an eternity. He reviewed photographs and reports, imagining the child's small face, shivering in the alley, and the waitress who had held him. Her determination and compassion had ensured the baby's survival, and Alexander knew he owed her more than words could convey. Upon landing, Alexander arranged immediate transportation to the hospital, his security team ensuring that no obstacles could delay him. Every step he took was precise, measured, purposeful, driven by a father's urgency and a deep appreciation for the bravery of a stranger. Back at the hospital, Maya was visiting the baby for the first time since leaving him in the care of the staff. She had brought a small blanket and a toy she thought might make him smile. Her heart leapt when she saw him laughing softly, his tiny hands reaching for the colors of the toy. She had not expected anything more than knowing he was safe. Suddenly, the hospital doors opened, and a tall man, impeccably dressed and exuding authority, stepped inside, scanning the room with sharp eyes. Maya froze, unsure of who he was. He walked toward the baby, kneeling down, voice gentle but filled with emotion. "Is this my son?" Maya instinctively stepped back, but something in his tone told her this was not a threat. The baby's eyes widened as he recognized the familiar scent of a parent. Reaching for him instinctively, Alexander scooped him up, tears welling in his eyes, murmuring softly, "I've been searching for you. You're safe now." Maya watched quietly, heart swelling, realizing that her actions, the risks she had taken, the choices she had made, had just reunited a father with his child. She didn't yet know the full extent of the man's wealth or power, but she understood something far more important. She had made a difference in someone's life, in the life of a family, and that was priceless. And in that moment, Alexander's gratitude toward Maya was profound, silent yet palpable, a recognition that she had acted not for reward or fame, but out of pure courage and compassion, a courage that would soon change both their lives forever. Maya Thompson had never imagined that her small act of kindness would lead to this moment. The hospital room, once filled only with the soft cries of a rescued infant, now felt charged with tension and emotion. As Alexander Grant approached, the infant safely cradled in his arms, Maya felt her chest tighten, unsure whether to speak, step forward, or simply step back. Alexander studied her carefully, his sharp eyes softened by relief and gratitude. Every line of his face, usually reserved for boardroom negotiations and high-stakes deals, now reflected something entirely human, something vulnerable. The baby cooed in his arms, and for the first time in weeks, Alexander allowed himself a smile, a mixture of joy and disbelief. I don't know how to thank you," he said, voice breaking slightly, his tone so unlike the authoritative, commanding presence Maya had seen in media profiles. "If it weren't for you, I might have lost him forever." Maya shook her head, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. I didn't do it for thanks. I couldn't leave him there," she whispered, her own voice trembling. The reality of the situation, the life she had saved, the man standing before her, the child in his arms, was overwhelming. Alexander took a careful step closer, lowering his voice, yet filled with quiet awe. "You risked your job, your future, for a child you didn't know." His eyes searched hers, full of sincerity. "That kind of courage, it's rare. It's extraordinary." Maya's heart skipped a beat, the weight of his words sinking in. She had acted without thought of reward, yet here was a man, powerful beyond imagination, acknowledging the depth of her bravery. The baby wiggled, reaching out toward Maya instinctively, as if sensing her presence. She smiled softly, tears threatening to fall. He's safe now, she said, voice steady despite the flood of emotion, and that's all that matters to me. Alexander glanced at her, then at the baby, a thoughtful silence filling the room. He had met countless people in his life, signed countless contracts, and made decisions affecting millions, but never had he encountered someone whose actions, so simple and selfless, carried more weight than any business deal. You have a remarkable heart, he said finally, voice low and sincere. And I want to make sure you never have to worry about your future because of your choices tonight. Maya blinked, unsure what he meant. I don't understand, she admitted, her voice small. Alexander stepped closer, setting the baby down gently in a hospital bassinet, then extending his hand. I want to help you finish your culinary education. I want to give you opportunities you've worked so hard for, opportunities no one should ever take away because they chose compassion over convenience. He paused, letting the words sink in, watching as Maya's eyes widened in disbelief. The hospital room, once just a place of routine care, had transformed into a turning point in her life. The woman who had felt small and overlooked in the world now stood face to face with someone whose influence could change everything. Yet Alexander's gesture was not about wealth or fame, it was about recognition, respect, and gratitude for a soul that had acted with integrity. Over the next few minutes, they talked quietly, sharing fragments of their stories, Maya speaking of her dream to become a chef despite her struggles, Alexander recounting his desperate search for his missing son. Each word revealed the depth of their experiences, the ways fate had intertwined their lives in a single, extraordinary night. Before leaving, Alexander turned to her one last time, voice firm but gentle. You saved more than a life tonight. You reminded me, and the world, that courage and kindness are priceless. I will make sure your bravery is never forgotten. Maya nodded, overwhelmed, a mixture of disbelief and joy flooding her senses. She had acted on instinct, guided by nothing but compassion, and now, that instinct had altered the trajectory of not only the baby's life but her own. As Alexander walked away with his son, Maya lingered, looking at the small bundle of hope in the bassinet, realizing that life had a strange way of rewarding the pure-hearted. She felt something she had never felt before, a quiet confidence, a sense that her choices, her courage, and her dreams could truly shape a future she had only imagined. That night, Maya left the hospital feeling different, transformed, as if the world itself had shifted in recognition of her courage. For the first time, she truly understood that selfless acts, even small ones, could resonate far beyond expectation, and that sometimes, fate chooses its heroes in the most unexpected ways. The news of Maya Thompson's bravery had already spread like wildfire across social media, but what happened next would turn her life upside down in ways she never imagined. Alexander Grant, the billionaire whose son she had saved, had not only reunited with his child but had quietly begun taking steps to ensure that Maya's courage did not go unnoticed, or unrewarded. Just a few days later, the staff of the Gilded Spoon arrived to find an unusual meeting called in the dining hall. The employees exchanged uneasy glances, whispering among themselves, unsure of what to expect. The air was tense, polished, and familiar, yet it carried the weight of impending change. Maya hesitated at the doorway, feeling a mixture of apprehension and curiosity. Her dismissal had left her unsettled, and though she had saved a life, the thought of returning to that polished, judgmental environment made her nervous. She stepped in quietly, hoping she wasn't stepping into another confrontation. Then Alexander appeared, impeccably dressed, his presence commanding yet approachable. He didn't belong in a restaurant staff meeting, everyone could tell, yet there he was, standing before them as if he owned not only the building but the attention of every person in it. Good afternoon, he began, voice calm but filled with authority. I'm Alexander Grant. Some of you may know me from news or business, but today, I'm here for another reason entirely. His eyes scanned the room, finally resting on Maya, who felt her heart pound. You all know what happened a few nights ago, he continued. A young woman, a waitress here, found a baby abandoned outside and risked her job, and possibly more, to save his life. Maya felt the heat rise in her cheeks, unsure of what to say. Alexander walked slowly toward the center of the room, voice unwavering. "That young woman is Maya Thompson," he said, pausing as the employees' murmurs grew louder, "and her courage, her compassion, and her integrity are qualities I believe should never go unrecognized." He reached into his coat pocket and handed Maya a sleek envelope, her fingers trembling as she opened it. Inside was an acceptance letter from one of the country's most prestigious culinary institutes, fully funded, along with a personal note from Alexander. "Your bravery has shown me the true value of character. I want to ensure your dreams are not just possibilities, but realities." The room erupted in applause, co-workers staring in disbelief as Maya blinked back tears. Her years of hard work, her sacrifices, and her quiet dedication had finally been acknowledged in the most extraordinary way. But Alexander's gestures didn't end there. He made an announcement that stunned everyone. He had quietly acquired the Gilded Spoon, purchasing the establishment to ensure that it would be run with integrity, fairness, and a focus on compassion. "This restaurant will not just serve food," he declared, "it will serve as a symbol of what courage, kindness, and hard work can achieve. Maya Thompson will return here, not just as a waitress, but as a manager and mentor, guiding this place into a new era." Maya's mind raced. This was more than she had ever dreamed. The restaurant she had loved and feared had now become a place where her values mattered, where integrity would be rewarded rather than punished. She was being handed an opportunity to grow, to lead, and to inspire others, all because she had chosen compassion over fear. Alexander didn't stop there. He shared plans for a charitable foundation to support abandoned children and single parents. Inspired by Maya's actions, the staff listened in awe, realizing that this was not just a financial intervention but a profound shift in culture, a chance to be part of something meaningful beyond the walls of the restaurant. For Maya, the transformation was both surreal and exhilarating. Her heart swelled as she looked around at co-workers who had once doubted her, who now stared at her with admiration. The waitress who had quietly carried trays, saved tips, and practiced recipes late at night had now become a symbol of courage, integrity, and hope. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Maya settled into her new role, balancing managerial responsibilities with lessons at her culinary school. She learned to oversee the restaurant, mentor younger staff, and implement initiatives that reflected the values Alexander had emphasized. Compassion, fairness, and excellence became her guiding principles, and slowly, the Gilded Spoon transformed into more than a restaurant. It became a community, a place where kindness and hard work were recognized and rewarded. And as Maya walked through the polished dining hall each evening, watching guests enjoy meals prepared with care, she understood that life had a strange and beautiful way of rewarding those who act without thought of reward. Her courage had not just saved a child, it had changed the trajectory of her own life, and the lives of countless others. Maya had chosen compassion, and in return, the world had chosen to honor her. Maya Thompson had never imagined that her life could change so dramatically in just a few days. The young waitress who once tiptoed through the polished floors of the Gilded Spoon, afraid of being overlooked or dismissed, now walked with a confidence she had never known. The restaurant, under Alexander Grant's guidance, had transformed from a place of rules and rigidity into a hub of warmth, integrity, and inspiration. She oversaw the staff with care, mentoring younger employees and teaching them not just the techniques of fine dining, but the principles of courage, empathy, and responsibility. Every corner of the restaurant reflected the values she and Alexander had worked to instill. Smiles greeted guests genuinely, orders were handled with precision, and kindness was never optional. Outside of work, Maya's life had changed as well. She had begun attending culinary school, her dreams that once seemed distant now unfolding in vivid reality. Each day in class brought new challenges, new recipes to master, new skills to perfect, and she approached them with the same dedication that had led her to save a baby on a rainy Chicago night. She realized that courage was not just about a single act, but a series of choices. Every day, to push forward, to act with integrity, and to strive for excellence. The child she had saved was now thriving, and Alexander made sure that Maya remained connected to him in ways that felt natural and warm. They would meet occasionally, and the sight of the little boy laughing and reaching out for her reminded Maya why she had acted without hesitation. That small, abandoned infant had become a symbol of hope, resilience, and the unexpected ways life rewards those who act selflessly. In the months that followed, Maya's story continued to inspire people far beyond Chicago. News outlets covered her journey from a humble waitress to a culinary student and rising restaurant manager. Social media shared her acts of courage as a lesson in humanity, compassion, and moral courage. And yet, despite the attention, Maya remained humble, never seeking recognition, only knowing that doing the right thing had been worth every risk she had taken. The foundation Alexander established in her name began supporting single parents and abandoned children, providing resources, mentorship, and education. Maya took an active role, helping families who reminded her of her own struggles. Turning her story into a platform to change lives gave her a profound sense of purpose, something far beyond personal success. One evening, as Maya locked up the restaurant after a long day, she paused in the dining hall, looking around at the gleaming floors, the polished tables, and the satisfied smiles of guests leaving. She remembered the rainy alley, the tiny cries of a helpless baby, and the fear that had gripped her heart. A smile touched her lips as she realized that moment, the one she had thought would be her greatest challenge, had become the defining moment of her life. Alexander walked up behind her quietly, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You've changed more than just this restaurant, Maya," he said softly, voice filled with sincerity. "You've reminded all of us what it means to act with courage, to lead with compassion, and to believe in the power of one person to make a difference." Maya turned, her eyes meeting his, gratitude and humility shining in her gaze. "I didn't do it for praise," she said, "I just did what I felt was right." Alexander nodded, smiling, "And because of that, you've done far more than you realize," he replied, the quiet confidence in his words carrying the weight of truth. As Maya stepped outside into the cool Chicago evening, she felt a sense of fulfillment she had never known. Her journey from a struggling waitress to a recognized hero, a student, a mentor, and a symbol of hope had been extraordinary, yet it had all started with a single choice, a single act of courage in the pouring rain. That night, she looked up at the stars, thinking of the child she had saved, of the lives she had touched, and of the dreams she now had the power to achieve. Life had tested her, challenged her, and rewarded her in ways she could never have predicted, and as she walked home, each step felt lighter, stronger, filled with the knowledge that courage, kindness, and integrity were not just virtues. They were life-changing forces capable of shaping destinies. Maya's story was no longer just her own, it had become a testament to the power of compassion, the unpredictability of fate, and the extraordinary results that can come from a single, selfless choice. And in the quiet of the Chicago night, she knew with certainty that her life had been transformed forever, not by wealth or power, but by the simple, profound courage to do what was right.